Hey everybody, Dave here. Hope you're having an awesome day. So, I have a really fun build that I want to show you, but more than the build, I want to talk about some of my top tips for doing a custom build, and it's easier than you think. So, come on, let's do it. Okay, tip number one is build up your inventory. You have to have action figures to work with. Now, the best place to get these was probably your thrift store or yard sailing. If you can buy a toy for 50 cents or $1 and you're building and working and taking it apart, and if you mess it up, especially when you're just starting, it's not that big of a deal because it was so cheap. Now, if you're going to run to Target and buy a Black Series Star Wars action figure and it's $30, and you're trying to repaint it and you mess it up, you're going to feel pretty bummed. But my first tip is get yourself a good collection of action figures, even if they're broken. It doesn't matter as long as you got good heads and good arms and good legs, and you can swap and switch and move things around. And so, tip number one: build up the inventory.
Okay, so here's building up my inventory. I found this on clearance at Target. It's from the movie Space Jam, so that's going to work great. And then I had this Han Solo that I also got at clearance, I think at Target. So I'm going to pop the heads off here. And this is going to be a pretty fun build. I just visualized Bugs Bunny's head on this Han Solo body, and I just loved the build of this. Like, this slender body is just really cool. So I'm really excited about this. I think I'm going to take the hands from Bugs Bunny and the feet. I think that's going to add a nice little touch to this build. So these hands popped off really easy. And I'm kind of looking at Han Solo's, it's almost like his sleeves are rolled up a little bit. So I think I'm going to cut his hands off. You can see there his arms a little bit showing. So I think I'm going to cut his hands off a little bit higher instead of right at the edge of the glove. So I'm just taking some snips. I'll snip that off. And then I'm going to kind of do a kind of a mock-up here. And there's just something really cool about the Bugs Bunny on this body. It just has this really cool swagger. I don't know. I'm really loving the feel of this. So that looks pretty great. And I think I'm probably going to also take the tail from Bugs Bunny because I think that'll really give a nice polished look. Now, one of my viewers gave me the idea of Vaseline and hot glue to make a swivel joint, but I think I'm going to try that at a different time. Instead, I have these magnets, and the magnet actually fits perfectly in the bug's head. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that in there. And then in the body, I feel like the magnet's a little too big, so I don't think I'm going to go with that. I'm going to try something else. I've got this smaller magnetic ball that I like it because I think it'll fit right in there and it will glue in nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that in and see what it does. And I did that, and it is super floppy. This is awful. Like, it's not going to work at all. And yeah, so this didn't turn out how I thought it was going to turn out. So I think that's a great segue to tip number two.
Okay, tip number two is remember things don't always go as planned. A lot of times you're working on something and it totally goes a different direction than you thought. That's okay. If something's not working how you thought it was going to work, that's okay. What you need to do is just stop and think through the process. What's happening? Why isn't this working? Is there a better solution? Is there something that somebody else has done that maybe you can watch other videos and be like, oh, that's how they did it. I do that all the time. And I think slowing down and using your brain and thinking through a problem. Sometimes we get so rushed and we're like, I got to do this, and it doesn't work exactly how we thought. So slow down, think through the process. It doesn't always go as planned, but sometimes accidents turn out even cooler. So tip number two, doesn't always go as planned, but that's okay.
So even though that didn't work how I thought, I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and pop this little magnet out. That came out no problem. Take my drill the hole through. That worked out pretty good as well. I glued the magnet into the neck, and that is just so much better. The magnetic grip is so strong. The head swivels back and forth, left and right. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. That's great. Okay, now the hand, I'm going to steal this peg, and I want to be able to have the hands be able to swivel left and right in the arm if I can. So just taking my X-Acto knife here, and I cut that little peg off, and then I'm going to take some CA glue and just put a little dab on there and glue the peg on. This actually worked out really well and held quite nicely. So I was pleased with how that worked. I'm going to let that sit and dry for just a minute. Now I have to think about the feet. And I want to use the Bugs Bunny feet, but I can't get these feet off. So what I'm doing is just soak it in some hot water that I put in the microwave for like 2 minutes and let that soak for a little bit. And then these feet should just pop right off. And once I pop off the foot, you'll see there's a pretty cool little peg system there. So now I got to start thinking through, how do I detail this out? Are the Bugs Bunny feet, do they look good? They're gray. Is that right? Do I need to paint them? So now I'm kind of thinking through the detailing and what the next steps are to get this done. So after snipping that, I'm drilling a hole, and I'm looking at this, and yeah, I can kind of tell I'm going to need to paint these feet. And so this is sort of the process of what to do next.
Okay, tip number 3. How much detail do I need? This is kind of a age-old question for me. I have the hardest time not knowing when to stop. Like, how much work do I put into it? Especially when I'm building a custom scratch build. Like, I don't know how many greeblies to put on there. So, but in a custom action figure, do you need to paint the entire body? Sometimes when you prime the entire body, it is a lot of work to go in there and detail everything out again. In this case, I didn't need to detail the body because the coloring and everything worked pretty great. It had the vest, the blue pants. It worked out really nice. I did look at the feet, and I was like, I think they'd be cooler if they were painted black so it looks more like a boot. I was looking at the Bugs Bunny head, and the color was just not quite right to me. It's probably just the molding and the plastic, and it had kind of the wrong color to it. So I got out some gray, and I repainted just the gray area and one coat, and it was super simple and done. So tip number 3, how much detail do I need to add?
All right, I painted the foot black. It looks really nice. It blends in. I think I'm going to do a gloss coat on that just so it blends a little bit better. And there's the plastic on the Bugs Bunny. I feel like it's just a little too red. So I think what I'm going to do is I just took this cheapy craft paint, looked at some images online. I think this gray will match a lot better. And I am just doing a really simple, quick one coat. And I think already you can see the difference between just a hit of paint. Painting up the neck here so it looks like Bugs' neck. This is a lot of fun. I think the teeth were looking a little flat, and I was like, oh, in the cartoon he has a little black line through there. So I just markered that on, and yeah, this is looking really nice. And now for the piece de resistance. A little bit of CA glue, and yeah, that looks great. Now, do I need a base?
Okay, tip number 4. Consider building a diorama or a base. Sometimes the dioramas can be really complex. This is just a little base, and it is literally a lid from a steak seasoning, and with a little bit of polystyrene cut out and glued on top, a couple of greeblies, and some guitar string. And this little base or diorama just pushes the build kind of to the next level. I don't always build bases or dioramas, but I've been trying to do a little bit more, and I found that as I do this, it kind of makes a project just a little bit cooler and a little bit more fun. So my next tip would be ask yourself, will a little base or a diorama help make your project just that much cooler?
So for me, the answer was yes. I wanted kind of this Star Wars kind of base and feel. Now, I scored this on my little vinyl cutter, but it's not cut all the way through, and I want to be careful not to bend it and crease it. So I learned this tip from Adam Savage on Tested. If you just take a straight edge and you cut an X from one corner to the other, and then, or a line from one corner to the other, and a line from the other corner, and have a little X, it actually allows you to pry and break loose the inside piece that otherwise I'd probably pinch and fold my little polystyrene piece here. So that looks pretty great. And I'm laying it on the wood base, and it looks cool, but it's not quite enough. I need something a little bit more there in the center. So I found some old window screen that I found at a yard sale. It's just scrap. And I glued that on there, and it gives kind of a grate feel. So I think that looks pretty cool. I did a little bit of dry brushing with some silver, and then I'm taking the silver and I'm just hitting the edges to look like a little bit of chipping. And I'm going to lay that on there. And this thing is looking really cool. I think we're about done, but I've got one more tip for you. So here we go.
Okay, tip number 5, and the final tip for the day is have fun doing what you're doing. When you're building these things, I hope that you're having a blast, and it's so much fun to watch it come together. I find myself busting up laughing just in my room by myself because it's like some of these things are so funny to me, and I'm loving what I'm making, and then also like seeing something come together and you get a little giddy and you're like, this is so awesome, this turned out great. So I hope you're having fun, and if you mess up, don't get stressed. This is just fun. We're having a good time building, and go have fun. Tip number 5, have a blast. Okay, so that was a really fun build, and we'll take some turnaround shots of this guy in just a second, but I hope that was helpful for you. I hope it encourages you and makes you think like, hey, I can actually do this and it's not that bad. And if you mess up, no big deal. Try again. You'll get better the more you do it. So, hey, as always, it's a great day to be a toy nerd. Have a great one.